The following stories tell the tale of 3 pranks that led to really horrific and sad deaths. We have 2 radio hosts that impersonated members of the royal family while calling a hospital, a girl who made her 11-year-old boyfriend falsely believe she was dead, and a man who was shot and killed while filming a prank robbery attack for a YouTube video.
One of the hospital workers who was duped by Australian disc jockeys into believing the Queen of England was on the phone for Kate Middleton has been found dead under mysterious circumstances.
Can you imagine being tricked into making a terrible mistake that ends up causing the whole country and even the then Prince Charles to laugh at you? All of this happened as a result of a nurse named Jacinta Saldana just trying to do her job. Jacinta was born in India and moved to England in 2002. Jacinta worked as a nurse at King Edward's VII Hospital, which is located in the city of Westminster, London. She was married and had 2 children, a 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. She would often stay at the nurses' quarters at the hospital while she was on duty, for convenience sake. Some background information is needed to understand what led up to these tragic events. It was December of 2012, and the royal family had just announced some wonderful news. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, was pregnant with her first child, the baby that would be born and named Prince George. As a result of her pregnancy, she wasn't feeling very well and would need to seek medical care. Here is a clip taken after she received care in the hospital.
Just moments ago, a very happy Duke and Duchess of Cambridge left the hospital here behind me. One of the reporters asked Kate if she was feeling any better. Kate nodded and smiled and replied yes.
There were not any complications with the pregnancy, but she was suffering from morning sickness.
After 3 days and 3 nights in the hospital, Kate, suffering from acute morning sickness, just departed the hospital with William, waving and smiling to well-wishers.
Now, during that time in the hospital, it was public knowledge where the Duchess of Cambridge was being treated. It was at King Edward VII Hospital in Westminster, the same hospital where Jacinta worked. Over in Australia, there were 2 radio hosts by the name of Mel Grigg and Mike Christian from Host Countdown 30 radio program. They were well aware of the fact that Kate was being treated at King Edward VII's hospital and decided to play a prank on the hospital in order to get funny content for their show. What ended up happening was the complete opposite of funny. They decided that they would call the hospital and pretend to be the Queen of England and see if they could get through. They used strange fake accents to trick the hospital staff.
Hello, good morning, King Edward VII Hospital.
Oh, hello there. Could I please speak to Kate, please, my granddaughter?
Oh, yes, just hold on, ma'am.
Thank you.
While there probably should have been stricter protocols in place to ensure the identity of the caller was who they said they were, that is neither here or there. Jacinta truly believed that it was the Queen calling and asking to speak with Kate, so she transferred the call directly to Kate's private nurse in the hospital. But it doesn't end there. That nurse, also convinced that this person was the Queen of England and not some imposter, began telling the radio hosts personal information about Kate and her health status. They spoke for several minutes. Mike also tried impersonating Prince Charles, adding even further to the disrespect of it all.
Saldana put them straight through to Kate's private nurse, who unwittingly divulged details about her medical condition.
The stunt was then broadcast on December the 7th for all to hear and laugh about. But to the royal family and the staff at the hospital, it was no laughing matter. Not only was Kate's personal information leaked to the public, but a hospital is not a place to be doing pranks. These are people who already have a stressful job and are dealing with life or death situations. They don't have time to deal with nonsense like this. The chief of the hospital came forward to make a statement about what happened and called it journalistic trickery. The hospital administration did not blame either nurse for what happened, nor did the royal family. However, the names of the 2 nurses involved became the laughingstock of the nation.
It became a global punchline.
An Australian radio station has managed to trick the hospital.
The whole world laughing at the duped nurses, even Prince Charles making light of the situation.
What's your reaction to the news about the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge?
How do you know I'm not a radio station?
It was clear that the royal was referencing the recent prank. It's hard to imagine how someone in Jacinta's position must have felt to hear this, knowing it was her mistake that was being joked about. People just couldn't believe that the nurses could have been duped by those fake accents or that this could have even happened in the first place. Meanwhile, the 2 radio hosts were practically gloating over getting away with it, acknowledging that they never expected it to actually work.
We were expecting to be hung up on. We didn't even know what to say when we got through.
But someone who one wasn't laughing was Jacinta. She was utterly humiliated and ashamed. Not only had she fallen for the prank and made this grave mistake, but now everyone was making fun of her. The shame took a major toll on her mental health and became too much for her to bear. On the morning of December 7th, just a day after Kate left the hospital, Jacinta was found dead in the nurses' quarters. She had taken her own life and had other injuries as well. She left behind several handwritten notes. In one of them, she blamed the radio prank for her death, but she also blamed the hospital for how the whole situation was handled in the first place.
It is with deep sadness that I can confirm the tragic death of a member of our nursing staff, Jacinta Saldana.
In a statement, the hospital administration claimed to have been aware of how badly affected Jacinta had been as a result of being at the root of the joke, but said that they had been trying to support her. They also provided more information about the manner of Jacinta's death.
Jacinta was recently the victim of a hoax call to the hospital. The hospital had been supporting her through this very difficult time.
But what of those two DJs that caused the whole thing? What did they have to say for their role in a prank that went horribly, tragically wrong?
In Australia, the DJs have been yanked off the air until further notice, while the radio station apologized and expressed deep shock.
In a letter that Jacinta wrote to one of her colleagues, she expressed the fact that she took the blame for everything that had happened and was deeply apologetic for getting others involved. It's all my fault, and I feel very bad about this getting you involved. Please accept my apologies. If there is anything I could do to mend it, I would do it myself. But it is all in hospital management hands. Explaining how she was duped, she wrote, "At the moment in time with that voice, I couldn't even think of anything else. It's all my fault." But that's not all. She also wanted to be responsible for what happened instead of the other nurse. "I feel very sorry for breaking security. I am ready for any punishment. Please do not hold the other nurse responsible for this," she wrote in another letter. The other nurse would later say that she revealed to the prankster that Kate was doing better and initially had no reason to believe the call was transferred through to her was anyone but the Queen, as she had been told. The only time that she began to grow suspicious was when she heard a male voice in the background telling the caller to ask about taking corgis for a walk. She then finished up the call. Imagine how Kate must have felt to have her name be wrapped up in a prank like this that went terribly wrong and resulted in someone's death. She and her husband William released a statement after being informed of the death of Jacinta.
And tonight, the palace released a statement saying William and Kate are deeply saddened by the tragedy.
The two radio hosts that carried out this prank broke their silence following everything that happened.
Unfortunately, I remember that moment very well because I haven't stopped thinking about it since it happened. And I remember my first question was she a mother?
When you found out that she was, of two children, how did...
Very sorry and saddened for the family, and I can't imagine what they'd be going through.
The DJs say this was supposed to be a simple, harmless prank. They say it was supposed to be a phone call that lasted no more than 30 seconds. They thought they would be hung up on immediately, but now we all know that is far from what happened.
They appeared tearful and emotional as they expressed remorse over the result of their prank.
Gutted, heartbroken. Mel and myself are incredibly sorry for the situation and what's happened.
There's not a minute that goes by that we don't think about her family and what they must be going through. And the thought that we may have played a part in that is gut-wrenching.
The hosts claimed that when they found out about Jacinta's death, they received the worst phone call of their life. The feedback they got as a result of the prank and what it caused was severe, and it came from all over the world, not just within London.
The global backlash has been fierce, from online death threats to calls for prison. The DJ's radio station announced it is banning phony phone calls altogether and suspending advertising indefinitely.
Both of the radio hosts would also be kept off the air for the foreseeable future. But before they went silent, they wanted to say something to Jacinta's family.
I wanted to just reach out to them and just give them a big hug and say sorry. And I hope they're okay, I really do.
Jacinta was laid to rest in India in December 17th of 2012. More than 1,000 people were in attendance. Many were seen wiping away tears.
But it is a very difficult day for Jacinta Saldana's family. Her body was brought from the United Kingdom by the family yesterday by air. It arrived amid fairly chaotic scenes at Mangalore airport. The coffin was besieged by the waiting press. It is now being brought here to the village of Sherva. This is the home village, really, of the family.
The actual funeral mass was private in order to give the family members a chance to say goodbye to Jacinta one last time. The press spoke with the priest who would be presiding over the service and said that while it was an extremely difficult day, it was also a chance to celebrate Jacinta's life and who she was to so many. Jacinta's family members came forward to give touching tributes. Her husband discussed how as a result of this, he felt part of him was forever gone and expressed how much their years together meant to him.
You were the light of my darkness, who always showed me the way forward. From the day we met, you always stood by me in times of hardship and happiness. I feel a part of me has been ripped out. Without your beautiful smile and sparkling personality, the house is an empty place to live.
Her teenage daughter, Leisha, also shared a statement about how the loss of her mother had affected her entire life.
We are shattered and there's an unfillable void in our lives. We love you, Mum. Sleep in peace and please watch over us until we meet again in heaven.
So, what could be done about the radio station that was responsible for this? Many people believe that there should be legal consequences, but because they did not intend for what happened to happen, this seemed unlikely.
There is a technical violation, which is using a listening device, then broadcasting that particular tape. So maybe there'd be a fine or something like that. But I don't think there's going to be any serious prosecution here because it would be very tough to link the actual death to the prank. Now, you can link it as a moral matter, but as a legal matter, there need to be a level of foreseeability that this is likely to happen, and I think that's a tough link to make.
Ultimately, things went back and forth between Sydney, Australia police and the Metropolitan Police Service of London, but no criminal charges were filed. Mel Greig and Mike Christian might not have faced any legal consequences for their actions, but they will always bear the mental toll of wondering if their actions were the direct cause of Jacinta's death and her broken family. But not only that, years after everything happened, Mel Greig would come forward to say the toll of everything that happened almost made her consider taking her own life as well.
7 years on and still haunted by that tragedy, we're joined from Sydney by Mel.
Mel explained that even after all these years, she still found it hard to hear the recording of the prank phone call, and that sometimes the guilt she carried was so heavy, she found it difficult to even survive.
There was a point about 6 months after the prank call where I contemplated whether I should still be here. The guilt that I felt for what happened and the trolling that I was going through. I was in isolation and people were continuously telling me, go yourself, go, you know, you don't deserve to be alive. So I did literally face the battle to save my own life.
Even though Mel did contemplate whether or not to end her own life, she ultimately came to the realization that is never the answer, no matter how depressed you are or however hard the challenges are that you're going through.
In that moment when I chose life, I decided to move forward and to learn what I could from what happened and maybe help other people in the future.
Even though Mel may have made the decision to move forward, it's hard to imagine the world will ever forget what happened. It's safe to say her life will not be the same. She acknowledged that she even had a recent radio contract torn up when the employer learned of the prank.
It still to this day affects my employment, my relationships, my friendships. It's something that's always going to be there. I don't want it to define me, but I can't avoid it because it still interferes with my life.
This is a clear example of a prank taken too far. If this case shocked you, the next one is bound to break your heart and make you consider how some pranks are nothing but damaging and cruel.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. The Marquette probate court judge has declared the case of Tyson Benz will move forward in the courts. He's the 11-year-old boy who killed himself following a social media prank. The 13-year-old girl involved in that prank and charged with his death was back in court today.
This is the very sad story of Tyson Benz, an 11-year-old boy whose life came to a very tragic end.
Tyson Benz from Michigan loved performing stunts in the water.
Tyson was not a depressed child. He was happy and animated. But something happened in a matter of moments that broke his heart so badly, he did something drastic that could not be reversed. Tyson was talking and texting with a 13-year-old girl whom he considered to be his girlfriend. Because she is a minor, the girl's name has not been released. Tyson's mom was aware that he was involved with a girl, but hadn't ever met her, nor had the girl come around to the house.
He kind of would sneak out and, oh, I have to go run and meet my friends, when really he would be meeting her and I didn't know. And then he would go down and skate with his brother at the outdoor rink, and then her and her friend would be there when I went to get him.
Tyson's mom, Katrina, didn't know that her son called this girl his girlfriend. At that age, when you're so young, dating usually isn't very serious, so she wasn't very worried about it, but she still didn't approve because of how young Tyson still was. Their dates were typically pre-arranged, and they would just meet up at places like the movie theater or the skate park. It was typical middle school dating. Because he knew his mom wouldn't approve, Tyson didn't tell her about the girlfriend. As time went on, Katrina was becoming a little more concerned by how seriously her son seemed to be taking this girl.
I think I just kind of sensed, or I knew that he was talking to her secretly in his room with his phone and maybe Snapchatting or whatever, texting, FaceTiming. I ended up messaging her on Facebook and telling her that he's not allowed to date, he's too young and they can be friends. I started off being really nice, and then I had to do further messages telling her, do I need to speak to your parents or your guardian?
But nothing changed. The two continued to see each other in secret. Katrina had been nice to the girl at first, but now felt she needed to be more firm. She even had to reach out to the girl's parents to let them know what was going on and ask them to step in.
And they acted like they had no idea.
Katrina confronted her son about the girl, but he never admitted that she was his girlfriend. What worried her even more was the fact that her son was dating someone older than him and how his behavior seemed to have changed since he met her.
He just seemed kind of distant, didn't seem as happy-go-lucky as he normally was. He still did all of his things, all his sports, and was with all his friends and everything, but he just seemed kind of not very happy, just kind of sad in general.
Of course, it's not normal for a kid of that age to be feeling this way. He should be thinking about sports and school, and when he and his friends are going to hang out next. The same thing went on for about 6 months. Tyson would tell his mom he was meeting up with friends, but would just go run off with his girlfriend instead. At this point, Katrina had done everything she could think of to keep them apart, and even took his phone away on some occasions. Katrina could have never known that what would happen next would be her worst nightmare. The day before the last day of Tyson's life was normal.
So he went to school, regular day, everything was fine. He actually went to tutoring, which I usually have to remind him, but he was all proud because he went on his own, and so he got a little reward. We went and got a little snack after school.
But the next day, on March 14th of 2017, Tyson was just relaxing in his room when his girlfriend tricked him in a very malicious way. She made him believe that she was dead.
She had pulled a big prank on him and told him she killed herself. Like, she confirmed it by using a friend's account to pretend she was saying she was the friend, and she said that the girl had killed herself.
Because Tyson had heard it from the friend, he believed it was true. He was so completely upset and distraught that he couldn't take it.
Now, after reading these messages, this 11-year-old decided that he would end his own life also. Now, unfortunately, these social media posts turned out to be a horrible prank.
When Katrina entered her son's bedroom, she found him. He was not dead yet, but he was in very serious condition. The heartbroken mother rushed her son to the hospital, where he was treated. But unfortunately, he didn't make it. He was taken off life support 3 weeks later. Now, this 13-year-old girl had an opportunity when she could have told Tyson that she made it up and it was all a joke, but she never did.
He either said, I'm going to hurt myself or I'm going to kill myself.
It's crazy to think that the girl knew Tyson's life was hanging in the balance, and she still didn't just end the prank. The police took Tyson's phone and were able to see who he had been talking to right before doing this. That's when they found out about the prank. Katrina believes that this was no accident on the girl's part.
Just from things I've gathered and information, I actually do feel that it was intentional.
The girl involved didn't tell any adults what she had done. She just went to school the next day like it was any other day. This wouldn't be surprising if she hadn't known that Tyson had actually taken his own life, but Katrina's mother says she did.
Well, she did contact a boy who lives behind us, and he said, yeah, there's a bunch of emergency service vehicles and all this, but, at the home. So she did know.
Katrina's grief is unimaginable.
I don't wish it on anyone or my worst enemy. It was
It was horrible. And he was so young, he was only 11. To see a little child who was so innocent and had the brightest future, have to let him go was horrific.
She believes that the girl who caused this should be held fully responsible.
The 13-year-old girl who's being held responsible for the death of an 11-year-old boy who took his own life appeared in Marquette County Probate Court this afternoon for a hearing. The girl, who is not being publicly identified, is being charged with several crimes, including using a computer to commit a crime in connection to the death of 11-year-old Tyson Benz.
But ultimately, the girl was sentenced to just 4 to 6 months of probation. This was not justice to Katrina, who in an interview said the defendant received the very minimal punishment she could receive for her heinous and devious acts committed toward my son, Tyson Jade Benz.
A parking lot now filled with cars, kids, and families enjoying a fun evening at Urban Air, a trampoline park, was a different scene Friday night. Police say a man named Timothy Wilkes and a friend did a prank robbery, running at a group with a butcher knife.
Timothy Wilkes was just 20 years old when he made the major mistake that would cost him his life. He and his friend got an idea for what they thought would be a funny prank for a YouTube video. They may have gotten the idea from one of the many YouTubers who have done similar pranks in the past. For example, the very famous creators Alex and Alan Stokes previously filmed a fake robbery video that ultimately got them arrested.
This was not a prank. This was criminal activity.
The twins posted video on YouTube laying out the prank.
We're gonna be running around in front of people and making it seem like we just got done robbing a bank.
Wearing masks and clutching bags, they run through the crowd in Irvine, California.
The police didn't find the prank very funny, and the twins were charged with false imprisonment and falsely reporting an emergency, and were sentenced to community service and probation. Even though Timothy did not actually have any bad intentions when he confronted the group with a knife, they did not know that.
In the midst of them trying to make the video, they run up on a group of friends with butcher knives trying to pretend to rob them for a YouTube prank video. But one of the people in the group, David Stones, had a legal gun that he was carrying, and he feared for his life and his friend's life, so he felt like he had to defend himself and started shooting. And in the midst of him shooting at the person, you could literally hear Timothy Wilkes try to say it's a prank after being shot at while he was crying and screaming.
When the police arrived on the scene, a 23-year-old man named David Starnes Jr. admitted to them that he shot Timothy because he believed that he and the public were in danger. He told them he was never informed that it was all a joke. He was not charged, and it was deemed self-defense. Police say these pranks must be taken very seriously. When people believe their life is in danger, they are going to respond, and that could mean the senseless loss of life that occurred in this very unfortunate case. But what of the unarmed man who accompanied Timothy to film the prank? It was possible that he would face legal trouble for his involvement.
I'm sure that the people involved in this would like to characterize it as a prank, but it certainly seems to be a prank that went seriously awry.
Timothy's grandmother came forward to share words of remembrance for her grandson and speak about the tragic loss.
I don't even see him as a man. I always seen him as my baby.
Soft-spoken and shy, just a few of the ways that Shirley Berry describes her grandson, Timothy Wilkes.
Timothy wasn't a criminal. He worked at Walmart and was attending school. He hoped to one day pursue a career in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. His grandmother doesn't want this incident to skew the way that Timothy is remembered.
I don't want them to have any misconception about my grandson. As far as this YouTube stuff, this is something new to me that he was actually into. It's still pretty much a mystery to me.
While Shirley is mourning the premature loss of her young grandson, she always wants to spread awareness about the dangers of these kinds of pranks. She says that if parents pay closer attention to what type of activities their kids are getting into, then maybe in the future, this kind of tragedy can be prevented.
Please let this be a note to really check on what your children are doing. It needs to be an awareness now that this is very dangerous.
She also noted that she doesn't hold any ill will towards David Starnes Jr., who shot her grandson. Meanwhile, YouTube is continuing to crack down on these types of videos to show that these types of pranks are not okay. Younger people can be very impressionable, and when they see their favorite content creators pulling stunts like this, they may try to imitate them. And so there we have it. These pranks that ultimately led to the tragic loss of life in 3 very different ways. We can learn a valuable lesson from each one of these stories. Before pulling a prank, consider what the possible outcomes could be and how it may impact other people. Carefully think about whether or not a quick laugh is really worth it after all. It could be a grave mistake. Thanks for watching and sleep tight.